I know you're expecting a howl right now because we've done it for the first 29 episodes, but today, no howl. And I'll tell you why. Eben's feeling more like an elephant these days.
That's right.
And so we're not going to force the howl. When we feel the howl again, when we feel the wolf, the call of the wolf, we'll be back.
Yeah.
Welcome to Mindful Warrior podcast number 30 or 31? 31. It is May 3rd, 2018. My name's Nathan Jackson. I'm here as always with Eben Britton. What's up, man?
Hey, my brother.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Also with us, as usual, is Jed Bauer on the keys. What's up, Jed? All right. Woo! And as always, Gandalf the Grey, lying peacefully on the ground, already asleep. We also have a very special guest in studio today, don't we, Eb?
We do. We do. I had the pleasure of meeting this powerhouse woman at this guy, Dr. Frank's podcast. You came with me to do Dr. Frank's.
Yeah.
She is pretty amazing. She's got some great ideas, very funny. She is the president of the lilmamas.com, not your mama's blog. Talk about all things motherhood. She is also a cannabis crusader. Her name is Celia Behar. Celia, it's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, we're excited to have you. You have, you really, when we were on the Dr. Frank show, you were there to speak about cannabis and postpartum depression.
Yeah. And I came on right after my Yahoo article had come out. They did a little piece about me talking about postpartum depression and cannabis. It was, what was it? Cannabis in the American Family or something like that. It was a series. And so I feel like it was a few days later that I came on. So you were like the first people I told the story to that I got accosted in our local bodega.
Yeah, that's bullshit, man.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, because we live right down the street from each other.
What do you mean accosted in the
Valley
bodega?
Village? Yeah, tell them the story.
Oh, so, this Yahoo article came out and it was a video as well as an article. And so they, filmed me talking about how I used cannabis for postpartum depression, which I did the second time around with my second child. Wish I'd known about it the first time. And they did this little video and, you only see the back of my kid's head, but you see me. And at one point, my oldest daughter hands me my vape kit because I'm really open with my children about the fact that I use it because I don't know how you're going to break a stigma when you're hiding it from your kids.
Right.
Then that's just creating more of a stigma. So I'm really open. Like they see the wine out, I have bourbon in the house, whatever. They're not going to touch that. They're not going to touch cannabis. I'm teaching them the same way. So, but that moment, I guess, when she handed me the vape kit, people, lost their minds a little bit. And we've got this sort of bodega up the street from my house, and I walk there a lot. And I had gone over there to grab something that day, and the guy in there that was running it was reading like the Yahoo article on his phone, but I didn't know that at first. And he's just eyeing me, and I'm in there all the time. So I think he'd like recognize me anyway in the piece, but then I happened to be there and he's just watching me walk through the store. And then all of a sudden, just like as I was buying stuff and trying to leave, he just went off on me about what a terrible mom I was and how I was responsible for, kids becoming drug addicts and how, his place had been robbed by drug addicts, twice. And it's my fault. Screaming at me to the point where the UPS guy had come in to like deliver stuff and was like gotten between us because I was so shocked. I just kind of stood there.
Yeah, you're stunned.
Yeah, I was like, what's happening? And the UPS guy came in and was like, you can't talk to her like that.
Wow.
You can't do that.
I love that.
It was bizarre.
It's the whole gateway drug argument that some people who are unfamiliar with it still lean on when something's going wrong in the world. Oh, it's this pot smokers.
Oh, yeah. It's so dumb. It was DARE. Like I grew up with DARE, the DARE campaign.
DARE to keep kids off drugs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's still, a thing. And last year after my article had come out, it was maybe a couple months later, my older daughter was in school and they had to do their DARE posters for their war on drugs campaign.
Oh my God.
And like her friends started drawing in pencil, the marijuana leaf. And she raised her hand and got her teacher over, and she's like, I don't think this should be on here. And her teacher said, why? And she goes, because it's medicine. It shouldn't be a Schedule 1 drug. She actually said Schedule 1.
I love it.
And how old is your daughter?
She's 11.
I love it.
And she was 10 at the time.
That's cool.
And the teacher was like, you know what? You're right. You can take that off there. And it went off.
That's
amazing.
I was so proud of
Look
her.
at that. Yeah.
I know.
So proud.
And big props to the teacher for actually, handling that the right way and not, doing it the same way that guy in the bodega did.
Exactly. Well, and she had a good argument because she's like, it helps my mom, it helps my aunt, because at the time my sister was fighting cancer and she knew that she was using it for pain and for her appetite and stuff. I mean, she had really good, reasons. She was like, she obviously listens to my articles, but she's like, there's no research stating that it's addictive. Like she went on this tangent, but it sticks, you know?
Well, it's very true. And she's speaking the truth.
Yeah.
I think we can attest to that, both Nate and I.
Oh, yeah.
Me, my own journey with this plant has been very nuanced. And, for me, the cannabis plant has always put me onto the spiritual path, and cleared the way for me to find myself in many ways, and I've actually taken a couple week break from my cannabis use, and that wasn't necessarily planned. It was something that I just really organically came to. I started, I would use it as I typically would, and it would, spiritual talk, it would open up my heart chakra to such an extent that I'd become so, through all of my things that I do, meditation and exercise and continuing to clean my diet up and tuning into some of my extrasensory perceptions that I have, consuming cannabis was making me it was just like shooting me off into another dimension of pure anxiety.
Yeah, and it can do that.
Yeah.
Makes you feel too much.
And what's so beautiful about it is that I've taken this 2-week break. I have no feelings of need for it. Like I'm not like, oh my God, I need to have my weed,
Right.
But it's really allowed me to just find clarity. And it's, there's nothing else that you can really take or do that has that, you have that freedom with.
Oh yeah. No, not at all. I mean, I just touched on it, but my sister actually, as you know, my sister actually passed away a couple weeks ago, which was awful and heartbreaking. And during that time, although I had my cannabis with me, my anxiety was so bad that a friend of mine gave me some Xanax, which I try to stay away from, at all costs because I just think it's so addictive.
Yeah.
And I think I've come close to having an issue with it before because it's so easy to have an issue with it. And I ended up I couldn't sleep after my sister passed away I'm still not really sleeping that well, but really couldn't sleep at all. And so one night I took it, and then I found by the next night I was like, oh, I definitely need that Xanax. And I took it again 3 nights in a row of being like, I really need the Xanax. At that time was like, oh, nope. See, and it clicked. I'm like, this is why this, but I can get a prescription for that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then I just dumped it, and I went back to a CBD, really high CBD vape pen.
Yeah,
and that's why the pharmaceutical companies hate cannabis.
Yeah.
Is because it serves as an alternative to so many different medications.
Yeah.
So when you first started using it for postpartum on your second child, when was that, and how kind of did you come to that decision? Was cannabis a part of your life prior to that?
It was, but hadn't been in a long time. I started using cannabis when I was 14, but I didn't realize at the time I was self-medicating because I've always struggled with anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was quote unquote recreational because it was social. It was about, friends and high school and
and
parties.
I didn't drink.
Right.
I didn't like to drink. That wasn't my thing in high school at all. Still really isn't. I'll have a beer or, whiskey here and there, but I'd prefer to use cannabis.
Yep.
I find alcohol actually makes my anxiety worse. So I tend to kind of not use that much. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. But then, and I used it all through college and after, but then when I was trying to, have a baby, I was like, well, I'm going off of this so that I'm not going to use any kind of, cannabis product at all. I'm not smoking anymore. I'm done.
So when you decided I'm going to try to have a child,
completely cut it out. Yeah. Like cold, I never missed it, honestly. Like it wasn't like I was pregnant, like, oh, I really wish I could smoke pot. Like it didn't occur to me.
Right.
And certainly I had anxiety, while I was pregnant. And then after I had my first, I had horrible postpartum depression, like textbook. Thought about killing myself or at least disappearing, somehow leaving her with somebody else. And I would just cry in her face and apologize to her because I felt really no connection.
And was that a daily kind of feeling?
Yeah. And it didn't kick in. It was 2 weeks into having her. She was 2 weeks old. So I thought I cleared it. I thought, and I'm a therapist, by the way, so
Right.
I should have known better. But when it's happening to you, you're in it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm not going to have postpartum depression. I feel great. And then it's just sort of, I could feel it, myself slipping, but I didn't know what to do about it. And then everyone was like, it's baby blues, it'll pass. But I couldn't get out of bed. I just sobbed nonstop. Wow. And finally I told a doctor, and she put me onto Prozac that day. Had me come into her office and put me on Prozac.
Wow.
And they let me stay on Prozac for a month or so, maybe 2 months. And then once I wasn't crying every day, they were like, you don't need it anymore. And they pulled me off of it. Like cold turkey, just came off of it. And then the anxiety, oh my God, the anxiety was so bad. It was crazy.
But while you were on the Prozac, it was effective in stopping the postpartum?
It was. It was I like to say it was a Band-Aid, and I don't want to say, because I don't not believe in SSRIs or pharmaceuticals for things. And I certainly needed it really badly at that point. I do not think that cannabis would have helped me with the first bout of postpartum depression on its own. I think in tandem, it would have been great. I think that if they had slowly taken me off the Prozac and I was using cannabis, I wouldn't have felt as helpless as I did once they took away the Prozac. All I was left with was anxiety. So I'd gone from crying and depressed every day to just feeling so crazy anxious that I couldn't sit down. It was awful. Whereas if I had the cannabis to use at night and I could have slept, which I wasn't doing, I think it would have made a huge difference. And then, that anxiety just sort of stayed that way. And I just sort of convinced myself all right, well, this is what being a parent is, I guess. You're just always really anxious and not really totally happy. And I couldn't really enjoy my kid fully because I was always battling the anxiety, and I had horrible insomnia.
So that's a big part of it, right? The insomnia. And the cannabis, that's why cannabis is so effective, is it allows people to sleep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're not very good to your children when you're tired.
Yeah. No, sleeping is just so crucial to our well-being.
Yeah.
How many women, what's the percentage of women that deal with postpartum depression?
It's the numbers vary because it's not everyone reports it.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's hard. But you have a 50-50 chance of getting it. Okay. Regardless if you ever had it before or not. So even though I had it once with my first, it didn't mean I was going to have it with my second. The other problem is that there's various forms of postpartum depression.
Sure.
And now there's postpartum anxiety. They're actually labeling it PPA, which they didn't used to do. Which is really more what I had the second time around. But people do write it off as baby blues or and they'll stick you on medication. So, and it could be baby blues because that's just your gigantic drop in hormone level. Right. And most women will cry for, about a week or so on and off and just sort of be unregulated. That will pass. But depending on, your doctor, it could be worse than that. And a lot of women don't want to admit it. I didn't want to admit it.
Yeah.
And again, I'm a therapist, but the stigma is so overwhelming that you have postpartum depression. It's
why? What is the stigma there?
Yeah.
That
you failed.
That you failed?
Yep. You failed.
Even though you delivered a healthy baby and you
failed,
have a healthy family?
Yeah, you failed because you're not
happy.
Yeah.
Because you're not happy discovering the one thing that you...
There's something wrong with you because you can't enjoy your own child and you're so depressed at what should be the happiest time in your life, and everyone said this is the best thing ever, and all you want to do is disappear or kill yourself or not get out of bed and not deal with it. Wow. I felt completely like a failure. It was awful.
Wow.
Awful. And I'm really open about it now, but I also do wonder, because I had it worse with the older one than I did with the little one. Will she look at that later and think, oh my gosh, that's because of, who I am.
Right.
It wasn't at all. It had nothing to do with her.
Right.
It was all me.
Yeah.
Is
that, have they done studies on is postpartum depression or, now postpartum anxiety, is it due to a steep drop off of hormones?
Yeah, the thing is, it's a steep drop off of hormones, and then your body's not replacing them fast enough, or sometimes at all. But I think, they haven't done enough research, by the way.
Sure.
It's a woman's issue, so usually they don't really care that much to be clear. They're like, fuck it, they'll be fine.
Sure.
That sort of happens to us a lot.
Yeah.
Same with birth control. So they didn't really care. I think that they've looked to see if there's any sort of genetic markers, and as far as I know, they haven't found any genetic markers to it. You just sort of don't know. And I think what really happens, and what's not spoken about enough, and I've tried to talk about it, is that you never actually go back to how you were. That's what I had to find out. So that I don't know, if it's just like a hormone level, or something just changed in my brain chemistry, or what happened. All I know is that I went from having, sort of just low-level anxiety my whole life to being off the charts anxious after I had kids, and bouts of depression, which I had never really had before. I mean, really bad times in my life, sure, I'd pull out of them, but it was nothing like the PPD. And then when I had the second one, after 2 years of secondary infertility, so I tried so hard to get pregnant again, and then had this baby who was really, really easy baby for that matter, and was so anxious that I seem to have I got like some sort of OCD on top of it, where like literally everything had to be done, put away, perfect. Like I had a set thing of everything had to be done before I would even sit down. Wow. And even when I was sitting down, it was like I'm running through the thousands of things in my mind that have to happen, and what's going to go wrong, and what could happen to my kid, and they could die in their sleep. And I mean, it was nonstop.
And that was just like your baseline.
That was my baseline.
Wow.
Like if something actually went wrong, I mean, forget it. I was, my rage was like out of control. It wasn't even like I would cry. I would get furious and end up screaming at both kids, one of which was, a year old.
Wow.
And I just couldn't take it. Yeah. And then to answer your question about how cannabis came back, I went to a party when my youngest was a little bit over a year old. I had just stopped nursing. The anxiety got even worse after that, because your body makes like happy hormones when you're nursing. Although I don't know why, because it's a really thankless job. But
interesting.
It really is. But it does. It kind of makes you more even keel. And I went to this party and with a bunch of my old friends from high school. My kids were there, and we were sleeping over at a friend's house. And so I had put them down to bed, and I came downstairs, and one of my friends who knows me real well, just turned to me and he was like, "What the heck is wrong with you? Like, what is going on? You're so different. Like, what's happening?" And he was the first person to say it to me. And I was like, "Oh, I'm just like this parenting kid." Like, I couldn't even get it out, And, and finally I was just like, I can't relax. Like, I don't know. This is so hard. And I didn't think it was going to be so hard. And I just have so much anxiety. I can't deal with it. And he was like, "Well, do you, still smoke pot?" And I got completely offended. Like completely.
How dare you?
Yeah. I was like, "I'm a mom.
Right.
I don't smoke pot. Moms don't smoke pot." And he was like, "Whoa."
All right.
He was like, "Well, I've had some friends that have struggled with anxiety and it's really helped them. So you might want to think about it." And it stuck with me, and I went home and I thought about it for a couple weeks, and then I reached out to a friend in California who I knew grew his own, and he sent me some.
Where were you living at that time?
New York, upstate New York, totally isolated.
Right.
Thank God for that angel in disguise who offered you the weed at the party.
Yeah, well, who told me to do it, yeah.
Yeah, who offended you in the moment.
Yeah,
and just planted the seed.
But planted the seed.
Wasn't the last time he offended me, I assure you.
That's what friends are for, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah. So, and it was great. And I didn't actually ever tell him that story, that I actually started using it, until I came out publicly talking about it. And was like, "Hey, that was you."
Well, it makes a lot of sense, as we know how cannabis works with our endocannabinoid system,
right? And
what the endocannabinoid system is responsible for, mostly, if not, the biggest thing it's responsible for is keeping us in homeostasis or hormonal balance. So being able to take something natural that helps our body regulate its own hormone levels, it seems like it it makes a ton of sense to me that would be an effective treatment for postpartum depression.
It has been to everyone I know now who has tried it. I've not had one person come back to me and say, you know what, that made it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
They've all been like, it even if it's, the crazy crying depression part, they're like, at least I was able to just calm down.
Right.
And, it didn't bring them out of the depression, but it made it so that they weren't sobbing, know. And I think used in tandem with another medication that can bring you out of it and then slowly get rid of the chemical medication and keep the natural one. That to me seems like, a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But doctors are not too keen on suggesting that, right?
They are not.
Because they don't learn the endocannabinoid system.
Nope.
And also they're in the pocket of
pharmaceutical
companies.
Absolutely.
So it's up to people like you to write articles and blogs and
get
a
lot
podcasts.
Of hate and have people yell at me in stores. All right, I'm on board.
But I imagine you've gotten a lot of positive responses as well.
Yeah.
Probably more positive than negative.
No, unfortunately.
No?
I get
Really?
I get more negative, but I get more negative publicly. That's what I've noticed is that, when I do an article, like the hate comes out so fast and furious because there's trolls. And people then don't want to say the positive things. So
And they're anonymous trolls. They're just like
Exactly.
on their with their thumbs, from somewhere who knows where they are.
Right. I mean, it's, they can. I get a lot of people writing me privately and saying, like, your story is my story. And not just women. Men wrote me and still do write me to say, like, I didn't have postpartum depression, but after becoming a parent, like, I turned to cannabis and this helps so much and you're normalizing it. And my wife is getting it now because she was judgmental of me using it, but she saw your story and now she gets it. So thank you so much. And, as long as I have one person that I feel like I helped, then I don't really care how many people hate me. That's not my problem. That's their problem.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing what power those positive responses have.
Yeah.
Like one positive response can outshine 1,000 hate messages.
Yeah, I mean, and I said this before we started, but I'm doing I'm fundraising right now for my sister's children. My sister left behind 4 kids, and it's a lot. And so I promised her that I was going to help the kids. And this morning I woke up and there was a donation in there and a little note from somebody that said, "You don't know me, but I read your story in Cosmo, talking about postpartum depression and cannabis, and you helped me more than I can possibly say. Thank you so much. I wish I could give more to the fund, but here's what I have," kind of thing. And that honestly, like,
It's beautiful.
So powerful.
yeah, that meant so much to me.
Yeah.
Knowing that this person wanted to do something for my sister's kids because I helped her with hers.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. We'll plug it at the end as well, but what is the fund? What is the fund?
Well, it's a You
kids?
Caring fund, and I think it's just help Julie Elizabeth Behar's children is what I think the title is.
Okay.
And I'll give you the link. And I'm just trying to set up trust funds for them so that obviously I can't bring back their mom, but I can provide them with a little financial security.
Yeah.
Because my sister wasn't able to work for the last 17 months, and medical bills are things are expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I will also say, as far as you said about pharmaceutical companies always wanting to make a buck, and people sort of look, I think, at the cannabis industry as being like all about the money, and my sister was on used cannabis when she first got diagnosed.
What kind of cancer?
Stage 4 colon cancer that had metastasized into her liver.
That's when she first noticed it? It was at that point?
Yeah. And she had been pregnant before they found it. So her youngest was 3 months old. So everything was mimicking postpartum stuff, and that's why they missed it. So, and we knew that it was bad from the beginning, obviously. So, same friend that told me to try cannabis for postpartum depression actually lives in Oregon, and so did my sister. And he works for a cannabis farm. So he was one of the first people I told, and he helped set me up with with her getting her stuff. And so we got her on a bunch of different cannabis oils and an RSO from the beginning that they saw really great results away.
Sorry, what is an RSO?
That's the
Rick Simpson oil.
Rick
Okay,
Simpson
got
oil.
it.
So it's the full plant
Yeah.
that becomes the oil.
Got it.
And they made it suppositories for her, which gave us endless jokes about her putting things up her butt, which was awesome. You can see my Instagram because I think I actually screenshotted some of those and posted them because they were really funny. And so we got her on RSO, and at first her liver was at 5% functioning. So they were like, we're not even sure she's going to make it through the first round of chemo. And so before she started the first round of chemo, we started she was dabbing at first, and then we added in the RSO. And at the end of her 3 months or 4 months of chemo, her liver was at 25% functioning.
Wow.
Which was, even the doctors pulled me aside and said, what are you giving her? Because that's not what chemo does. Chemo kills the cells and your liver gets a chance to regenerate. Hers was functioning better.
Wow.
And I told them, and they were like, well, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it.
And that was a high CBD type of thing?
It's the entire plant, so it's
Right.
everything. It's THC, THCA, and CBD is all in RSO.
Okay, and what plant was there a certain strain that you guys were using?
Not that I know, because and that's what I was going to say is that, listen, they had her on methadone, they had her on lorazepam, they had her on opiates, and then I had her on cannabis. If you think any insurance company donated any of those medications, you'd be incorrect. But
Right.
every cannabis company that ended up reaching out and helping my sister donated it to her.
Wow.
Every
awesome.
single one of them.
It's awesome.
And that was huge, like to watch an industry that we know they do make a lot of money,
Yeah.
and they could have, charged however much they wanted. They would hear her story, through my friend Tom, who got me connected, and they'd want to help. I mean, everyone wanted to help because most people in the cannabis industry understand that
Yeah.
this is a medicine,
Yeah.
and they're really not in it to make a ton of money. They're really in it to help people
Yeah.
with whatever it is, even if it's to help you relax and have a good time.
Yeah.
It's such a different standard of what, the pharmaceutical company is doing. Like, we're being kind of raked over the coals.
Yeah.
So,
And
it's,
our government officials who are in place aren't necessarily helping that very much.
they are not. And when my sister, when her liver was functioning enough, she qualified for a federal trial to put a pump that was giving chemo directly to her liver, and it was a surgery. So she used to say she looked like she was smuggling apples because you could see this pump in there, and they told her that in order to do it, she couldn't use cannabis anymore, and their reasons were because it would make her liver toxic. And from the get-go, I was like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
There's never been a federal study that says that one way or the other. So that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You don't know that at all, but you're going to keep giving her methadone and lorazepam and, all kinds of different opiates, and that's fine. But it's because it was a federal study that she couldn't use the cannabis. And I will forever wonder, in that 7 months where she didn't use it and the pump was working, would the pump have kept working if we'd also used the cannabis? Because I don't see how they could say that would make, it's going to make your liver toxic. How do you know that?
Well, it makes sense if she had a 20% increase in liver function using the cannabis. I don't think her liver was getting more toxic through that period.
And just because the chemo was going directly into her liver, what does that matter?
Were you able to have this discussion with any of the doctors? And they basically said, it's the policy, type of thing?
It's the policy, sorry, this is what we were told. And, and then sort of hush-hushed, all the nurses would say, it's a federal trial. And they told her that they were going to test for it, and if they found it, they'd kick her out of the trial.
Jeez.
And, which, by the way, they never did.
No. Right.
They never even tested it for her.
They never would have.
I don't think so.
And that seems like a really cruel game to play with someone who's fighting for their life.
Right.
Well, we're going to test you, but we're really not.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's pretty gross.
It makes me sick to my stomach.
Right.
Really.
And then, seeing, and then the pump failed eventually. And then after that, it was full blown, it was chemo and back on to cannabis. And, she told me many times that the cannabis made her feel so much better. And at one point, it was the only thing that was keeping her eating. We'd find her like at 2 a.m. eating ramen in the kitchen like a college kid. It would crack me up. And we were just so happy that she could eat because, that obviously kills you faster when you're not eating anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And without that cannabis, she wouldn't have been able to do that. And actually, that I have Tracy Ryan from Canna Kids to thank.
Amazing.
Because she was the one that donated that to her in the end. A lot of it, which was so helpful. And my sister, she would taste horrible, and her fiance would give her the 3 doses all at once, and she'd have like water. It was just hilarious to watch her take it. She'd, but then she'd write me when she was running out, and she's like, "When's the next cannabis batch coming?" Because it was saving her. And I think about people across the country that are going through what she's going through, and they don't have access to that.
Yeah.
And that makes me crazy.
Yeah.
It's just not fair.
Yeah.
My old high school football coach passed away a couple of years ago of pancreatic cancer.
That's
and
the
he
worst
had
one.
it for 5 years, and he was just battling and losing so much weight and fighting, and he couldn't eat anything. And eventually his doctor recommended Marinol,
Well,
which is synthetic, right?
Yep,
It's not even real.
right.
But that gave him a little bit of relief and allowed him to eat a little more. And then I was at the point where I was just starting to learn about this cannabis world medicinally. And so I would have some talks with him and try to get him to, think about this, think about using, oils or tinctures, and he kind of dabbled in it a little bit late in his life before he passed away, and it gave him some relief. But this guy was an old school guy in his 60s. He used to be a cop. He's a football coach, pillar of the community. There was so much of a stigma around it that he did not feel comfortable sharing this with anybody else or reaching out. The doctors didn't give him any help there. And it just kind of goes across the board, the types of people who are affected by this stigma and who can't have this kind of medicine when they really need it.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy that we've gotten to this point where people are just more willing to take this white pill than take a plant that comes out of the ground.
Right.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
When you think about the fact that, you use herbs and spices to season your food, I mean, cannabis is another herb. It's another plant. It's another piece of vegetation.
Right.
And it has these chemical compounds, and we only think this way because of 70 years of bullshit, of propaganda and misinformation.
Well, and here's the thing. You can abuse it for sure.
Yeah.
You can
Sure.
abuse anything. I've seen a
Absolutely.
Glade plug-in be abused by doing whippets off of it.
No way.
Whoa.
Yep.
What?
Oh, yeah. You can totally do a whippet off of a Glade plug-in. I've
God.
seen it happen.
And then your breath
Holy
smells
shit.
like vanilla.
Apparently.
Oh my.
Potpourri. But it can happen, you know?
Sure.
You can abuse food. You can, I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's
it's-
people who huff paint. You're not banning
right.
paint.
Sudafed. Then we didn't ban Sudafed. We stuck it behind the counter. You can still get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stuff that makes me crazy. But that's also why, for mamas, for the Lil Mamas, when I came out publicly talking about it, that my brain went there, where I was like, how can I break the stigma? How can I normalize it? How do you normalize anything? And right away I just thought, well, moms do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
I
if
mean,
moms say-
the moms of America, I mean, the moms of the world are really the key to this whole thing.
I agree.
mean, you're the keepers of the household, the keepers of the family.
Right.
Men are so fucking, we're just like going about our days, trying to make something of ourselves. I mean, many men listen to our wives, our significant others on what to take, how to eat, all this stuff.
Right.
So the mothers of the world, if they can really start to be vocal as you are and embrace this plant and bring it in as the safe thing that the family can really benefit from, I think it's a major entry point.
And I think a lot of women are doing that now. I notice it more and more on Instagram and Facebook. I think I think there's a fine line. I mean, I've certainly seen it over sexualized, which,
Yeah.
I'm all for being sexy. That's awesome. But I also do wonder what does that really bring the
It
plant?
does, the rec world does that a lot too.
A lot.
At the shops as well.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
girls who are
Cannabis
there.
cup.
Yeah, the cannabis cup.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's
I mean,
like
it's a lot.
it confuses things a little bit.
It does, and it makes people like other moms be like, well, that's not my thing. Like,
Right.
As I'm watching different things roll out, like our event today, which I have yet to publish on Mamas, but should when we're done. There's a new magazine that came out. It's MJ Lifestyle magazine, and it's like, these two moms that are doing this sort of high quality, glossy, beautiful magazine and are actually talking about like all things cannabis for women in a way that's not that. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm, Mary Jane Maidens, all of you guys, like they're great. I don't have an issue with it. I just think if we're going to break stigmas and normalize, you want to do it in a way that mainstreams it and makes it so that it feels accessible to other people and to moms like specifically.
Right.
And I have noticed a lot of, cannabis and mom websites coming up, women and cannabis, that kind of stuff. I think what makes Lil Mamas different is we're not that. We're not all about cannabis. In fact, it's rare that we actually do promote anything cannabis related. Every couple months, I'll usually throw something in there and that was on purpose. Because we already were an established website. We were already reviewing products and talking about events and doing interviews and writing blogs. And then I thought, well, what if I just like reviewed a cannabis product and never really said anything about the fact that it was cannabis? Just did it. Like I would do anything.
Right. Yeah.
And I did. I did a topical lotion and roll-on called Empower Body Care.
I love that.
Was like, and nobody cared.
Yeah.
Like nobody. And then their sales went up. And I was like, well, look at that. Like they didn't, it was so interesting. And then we took it a step further and I made a microdosing edible company. We give a stamp of approval. So the cannabis company, the topical got the first stamp of approval. And we do that with cosmetic companies and diapers and blah, blah, blah. And I just threw a cannabis company in there.
I love that.
And then we did it for edibles. And so we had SDK Snacks, which is a 5 milligram cookies that a mom made so that moms could continue parenting and use an edible without feeling like they were falling through the floor. You still got to cook dinner.
Right.
And, otherwise, it's like
you don't want to eat a 50 milligram candy.
That's when you're like, and it's cereal.
Yeah.
Like, you got nothing. Yeah. And she made that to do that. So then she got the stamp, and I threw that in thinking, oh, I'm going to get all this backlash. Nothing. Nothing happened. And then took it one step further, and the farm that helped my sister the most, who my friend Tom Grubbs works for, who was the one that got me to try it for postpartum depression and helped my sister, we gave the stamp of approval to a cannabis farm and sent out a press release. And I was like bracing for impact of people just being completely pissed that this mom blog just said, we endorse this farm. And we lost 3 advertisers, and that was it. That was the and 2 of them were big pharma advertisers.
Right.
Good. So fuck them anyway.
Fuck them anyway.
Yeah, goodbye.
I think that, just to accentuate your point, I think that's why it's so important, the work you guys are doing, because you are a mainstream motherhood blog. You're not a cannabis outlet.
No, and in fact, my business partner is sober.
There you go.
Openly, publicly, very, very a sober person. So she's certainly not endorsing cannabis for anything other than medical reasons. And she knows what I went through, and she knows of anxiety herself and what that can do to you. So, when I was endorsing Moto Perpetua Farm and told her I was going to do it, she was like, yeah, that's medicine. Do it.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Is she interested in the CBD side at all, or totally?
I can't really speak for her. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure.
Oh, okay.
I suspect she's open to that kind of stuff, to the CBD stuff. I don't think she has any real issue with it.
Yeah.
When it comes to this kind of stuff, she's like, you do your thing and I'll do mine. And as long as you've done the research and you've tested the product and you're feel comfortable with it, then I'm comfortable with it. And we leave it like that. She's a singer. It's Allison Porter is her name. She won The Voice a couple seasons back.
Amazing.
So
that's cool.
I don't tell her how to sing.
Yeah.
And
nice.
I wouldn't have to, because she's amazing. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so much about breaking the stigma is about what we've learned is about language and about how you talk about it, and not using those trigger words. And you're such a good writer, and you're able to communicate your ideas so well that it's an appealing thing for people to hear and to listen to. And when you speak about it so matter-of-factly and so eloquently, and like you said, you don't make a big deal about it. It's just another part of life that you found works for you. I think the language is so effective that you use.
Thank you. I mean, I think that is a thing that I kind of like learned on the fly. I almost never say pot anymore. I won't say marijuana almost ever at this point. I didn't realize all the negative connotations that came with that word as far as racism goes as well. I had no idea that was a thing, and that I learned last year. I think when you take it back to its, medical name, which is cannabis, and that we have the cannabinoid system in our body, like that makes complete sense to use it in that way. But it's also like a lot of it's common sense, I think, and just knowing like I'm not going to be like, I'm going to go do bong rips near my kids. Like I don't. And I wouldn't, It's not about that.
Exactly.
I think it's accessible for people when you put it into a more like, you take that sort of like onus of, this is something you do to get wasted.
Right.
Like, take that away. It's, it's not why you're going home to like have a glass of wine. It's to unwind, which, and I know we talked about this on Dr. Frank, like, why is that so acceptable?
Right.
Like moms are like, they have shirts, give me all the wine.
Right.
Yeah, there's jokes about it. You
all
see
the
memes
time.
all the time. Mommy's having another glass of wine.
Right. Go get
It's like,
mommy a beer, like whatever, and like, but
that's just totally accepted.
Yeah, give mommy all the weed. Are you kidding? Like
You'd be fucking
like I'd be screwed.
Dumpsterfied.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, and also my oldest daughter knows how to make cocktails. Yep. Like she wanted to learn. I was like, sure. So she can make me an old fashioned. She can make a martini. And I joke and I call her Sally Draper when she does it at parties.
Oh my God.
She doesn't know what that means, but whatever. Fuck it. But like, could you imagine if I was like, go open up the china cabinet, go unlock that,
Roll up a
and
joint.
roll up
Yeah,
a joint.
roll me a joint.
Like, I mean, that's.
No.
But handing me my vape pen is like a totally different thing. Which, by the way, I don't even let her do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because I had the moment where I was like, well, maybe that's not okay. But it's okay for her to go get me a beer.
Right.
Why is that different?
It just shows you how effective the whole war on drugs and the reefer madness and all that propaganda and the Nixon, the Nixon administration's crap that they did. It's been embedded in us for so long.
Yeah.
Yep.
We went through the whole kind of repealing of prohibition with alcohol. We tried to do that. It was for, I don't know how long it was illegal, maybe 8 years in the 1920s, the roaring 20s. And then they realized, no, we can't do that anymore. They made it legal. And it's just kind of part of everybody's life in a way that cannabis hasn't been. When I was in high school, I was introduced to it like many of us were in a social setting, in a kind of, sneaking around, getting away with it. We felt like we were committing a crime or at least doing something wrong.
Right.
But then when I was in college and I started getting injured playing football, I started realizing, wow, this actually has medicinal properties.
Yeah.
And when I got into the NFL, I had no taste for pills. I had no taste for those drugs. Cannabis was what I leaned on when I got severely injured after a game or whatever. And then it wasn't until after the career where we started to learn about what we're talking about now, the science behind it, the truth behind it. But we're just never exposed to it. And in those formative years when we actually have an opportunity to kind of start getting that language down and understanding what we're putting in our bodies, we're kept from that knowledge, And so that's why it's so important what we're all doing now, is because hopefully people are hearing this at an early enough age to not be affected by that stigma.
I hope not. I mean, I saw something on Facebook from a high school classmate yesterday where she posted some article from Daily Mail, I want to say, which I've seen before. And it's from 2013. And it was like, studies show that cannabis or marijuana use, and I think it said marijuana because that's always like what? Why is it saying that? With teens causes, lifelong brain issues and can lead to a number of mental health disorders, including schizophrenia. And I wanted to make sure it was the same article I'd seen. It was. I sort of scanned through it. And, she had it posted and was like, had all these exclamation marks. And I just wrote underneath it, there has never been any federally legal research on cannabis medically in our country. So this entire, in quotes, study is bogus.
Yeah.
Because there's never been any.
Yeah.
Tracy Ryan is about to do you're doing the fundraiser, I think, as well,
Yes.
right? So, Canna Kids, our friend Tracy, has just gotten permission from the government to do federally legal clinical trials using cannabis on kids with cancer.
Wow.
That's the first time that that's going to happen in this country. And she got that to happen with a lot of backing from the Israeli government, who's already made it legal.
Yeah,
And
they're on
so
top of it over there.
They're leading the charge,
Right.
which, it's like
It's just,
some
like,
people there
mind-blowing.
still like ride camels and no, we can't fucking do anything about it here.
Right. Meanwhile, they have like these CBD nasal sprays that they give to
The military.
to military on the battlefield if they have a head injury, right? Dr. Machulam.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we need our American version of Dr. Machulam. Who's that guy or gal?
I don't know. I mean, maybe Dr. Frank soon. I'm not sure. I mean, Tracy, who's a mom, got into... Tracy's leading the charge as far as making medical things happen at this point. She's a mom. She's fearless. Her daughter has brain cancer. Sophie just had a part of her brain removed so they could take the tumor out. Those tumors were put into humanized mice that were so they will process things the same way as a human is. That it was put into it, and then they were sent to Israel to see how those tumors grow, and that the Israelis treat them with cannabis. That's what she's doing.
Yeah, she's just fucking killing it.
Oh, she's a powerhouse, and she's one of my closest friends. I love her. She's who actually made me speak publicly about PPD and cannabis. By the way,
I love it.
Yeah,
well, it's huge.
Do it.
It's really amazing.
It is.
I mean, even aside from the cannabis aspect, the fact that you can be open about your postpartum depression and what you were going through, I think that in itself opens women up to, accepting this.
Thank you. I hope so.
Absolutely.
It's really lonely to go through.
Yeah.
Like really lonely.
And you were saying you're supposed to be so happy, and you're not, and so that can be really isolating.
It
and
is.
I feel like that's like the extreme version of something that everyone's kind of dealing with to some extent in this world. Like, oh, this party was supposed to be the best thing ever, or I got my job that I was always waiting for, and that was supposed to make me happy, or I was going to lose a bunch of weight, and that was supposed to make me happy now that I'm skinny. But it's not. Like nothing that we're doing that we build up as being the pinnacle of happiness and success meets that build-up standard in our minds, and it ends up being a super letdown, and having a baby is just the ultimate version of that, because women are just taught from such an early age that's the ticket, that's the only thing that matters.
That's why you're here,
right?
To have a baby,
right?
And to be a mom and to nurture that child, and then you go and listen. I was on the fence about having kids, and by on the fence I mean I didn't fucking want any. And like my ex-husband is who really wanted them, and then I finally got on board and was like, and then when I had postpartum depression, I was like, it was even, I was like, even worse. Like, this is because I didn't want any, and I'm a terrible person, and, this
or
is
you were like, I was right, I shouldn't have had him.
Oh, yeah, I went there right away. I shouldn't have had him. They'd be better off with somebody else. I mean, it's super isolating.
Yeah.
It is. Being a mom is isolating in general, though.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
I have the two. I have two little girls.
And so after the second one was born and you started using the cannabis, how did that kind of change the way you parented?
Oh, I became so much more patient and in the moment. I've said this a million times, but it made it so that my brain and my emotions like got on the same page. So where before I felt like my brain was doing one thing and my emotions were the other way, like nobody was connecting. And now, I'll use it, and when I'm feeling super anxious, and my kids will see it and be like, "Ma, I think you're having a tough time, Mommy. Like, do you need a cookie?" Like they'll flat out say that.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I'll like, I'll always border on being like, wait, like, because I want to get mad at them for calling me out, and then I'm like, yes,
you're right.
You are correct. It couldn't hurt anyway. I feel more in the moment with them. It makes it so the cycling thoughts like stop, and I can just enjoy them. And I'm listening to their stories and looking at their crappy artwork, and telling them it's really good.
Yeah.
Instead of, like rushing them off to do something else, to make dinner, to do thinking about 500 things. I can just stop and be with them. We played like the other night, we played for an hour. We played Blindsman's Bluff, like with, like a thing on my head and like walking around and bumping into stuff. Like, there's no way if I hadn't used, and I actually used an SDK cookie before they got home. There's no way. I would have been so distracted and been like, oh my God, I have to make dinner. You have to do your homework. You have to do whatever. And instead I was like, why can't I just play with them?
Yeah.
That's
great.
Yeah. That's what changes.
For women out there who are thinking about becoming mothers who also use cannabis, I know there's a debate going on in their heads and, of course, in society at large. Do I stop completely in advance like you did? Is there a safe amount of cannabis to be consumed while trying to get pregnant and while being pregnant? Do you feel comfortable kind of talking about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know your body, and listen, they'll put you on different medications for nausea when you're pregnant. I believe at least one of them has got a class act lawsuit against it for birth defects. So there's that. But they'll prescribe that too, and they'll also prescribe, Prozac, and I believe Zoloft is the other one that you can take while you're pregnant. But you can't allegedly use cannabis. Sort of makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And doesn't that what you're going, everything you're taking going into the fetus as well, and kind of activating in their body?
Yeah. I mean, to a certain, your body makes a barrier, so only certain percentages are going to cross over the placenta. But
what about the cannabis?
It crosses, but not a lot.
So it activates the cannabinoid receptors in the fetus?
I don't know exactly. I know it crosses over the placenta and it can get into the fetus, but I'm not totally sure about the endocannabinoid system in the fetus. But it definitely crosses over the placenta to a certain percent, because babies have certainly been born, tested for THC, and come up positive.
Right.
That's usually when CPS will get involved. I know a lot of moms who have used it when they were pregnant, who are using it when they're pregnant. One of which is somebody the Canna mommy, Kelly. She's amazing. She's had her kids, I think one was even taken away from her briefly, but CPS has certainly been involved, and she just keeps coming out and talking publicly to make it stop, and got her kids back and charges were dropped because she tested positive while pregnant. And I think maybe, if I remember correctly, her infant maybe did as well. But they would test positive for Prozac, and they would, and Zoloft as well. And there's studies on that. And by the way, those studies are pretty sketchy on what those things cause. There was a 2-year study that went on in Jamaica. It was it was longer than 2 years. It was like 10 of women who used it while pregnant and nursing over a 10-year period to see if there was any birth defects or any sort of anything that happened. And there was nothing.
Yeah, I read that as well.
Nothing.
So the discipline that she was incurred had nothing to do with the health of the baby. It just had to do with the fact that she tested positive.
Exactly.
Right. So she has healthy children.
Yes, completely.
Yeah.
And I have not met a mom who's used it either while pregnant or nursing that doesn't have a really healthy child. Had nothing wrong with their kids at all.
Well, there are cannabinoids in breast milk.
There are.
I mean, it seems to me that because it functions with our body's system, the endocannabinoid system, naturally, it seems that there wouldn't be any negative side effects to it.
I don't see what they could be other than your baby possibly sleeping a little longer. And
feeling
if anyone can tell me that is a negative side effect, you don't have a fucking kid
you
then.
have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
Sleep.
I mean, I think that we definitely need more research.
Yeah.
But, as far when you take a glance at it from the facts that we have, it seems to me that, it's like taking any other herbal supplement, while pregnant and while breastfeeding, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, and even herbal supplements can be, there's ones that they should do research on.
Yeah, definitely.
But there was a point when everyone was like, use St. John's wort for everything, and there's studies coming out now that they're like, oh, don't use St. John's wort when you're breastfeeding.
Right.
And I'm not sure what those are going to show, but something happened.
Yeah.
I just don't know what it is. It's just too bad. And that being said, I also want to say there's a big controversy with moms nursing and using cannabis in the forms that they're using it in.
Sure.
There was that picture that went around with a mom that was nursing a baby and doing a bong hit at the same time.
That's a little much.
Yeah.
It was. And here's my issue with it. Not that you're doing a bong hit. I don't care. But any smoke near your newborn.
Right.
It wouldn't even bring my newborn to a campfire.
Right.
Like,
you don't need
that, you know? And that's the thing. And I wouldn't have vaped when I was pregnant, but I would have eaten it had I known that I could have done that for nausea. Instead, I was eating these shitty ginger candies from China that probably corroded my insides, but whatever. It's that kind of thing. But we need more research. And actually, that being said, because we talked on Tracy's, federal, her study that she's trying to get done, and that Eb and I are both helping. We have a team, Lil Mamas, that is trying to raise $25,000 to help get her $500,000 goal to be able to run these clinical trials. And we've got our farm that we gave the Lil Mama approved, stamp to, Moto Perpetuo Farm. If you're in Oregon, they have a a couple pre-rolls that are called Help on the Way, and they are F Cancer rolls. That's what they're called. And they've got Canna Kids hashtagged on it and the Lil Mamas hashtagged on it. And 100% of the proceeds from them selling those pre-rolls are going to Team Mamas to support Saving Sophie and Rally for Kids with Cancer.
These guys are awesome.
They are pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
Very
so
awesome.
How do our listeners at home find those pre-rolls?
Go on to follow Moto Perpetuo Farm on Instagram. They also have a website, which is just motoperpetuofarm.com.
Can you spell that?
Moto, oh gosh, yeah. M-O-T-O, Perpetuo is Pereto. I have to look at it. .com.
Got it.
Like perpetual motion, but it's Perpetuo Italian.
Got it.
Nice.
And if you follow them on Instagram, they've got a thing on there plugging their pre-rolls. We also did, as mamas, plug the pre-rolls to let you guys know. You have to be in Oregon to get those, but if you listen in Oregon, you can get them. And again, 100% of the proceeds, they're donating all of the proceeds to Team Mamas to be able to help this cause, to get research done to help cancer patients.
That's awesome.
Wow. That's really cool.
Very cool.
That's amazing. And one more time of your sister's fund.
Yes, that is help Julie Elizabeth Behar's children, I believe is what it is. I'm going to reach in my bag. Hold on, I can find it. And that's, I'm trying to get her kids a trust fund. I'm doing relatively well so far. And so any little bit helps. Obviously, if her story, touches you, and if you want to read, I wrote a blog about it on the Lil Mamas that came out on Tuesday. I know Eben said you read it this morning.
Yeah.
TheLilMamas.com.
And it's LILTHELILMAMAS.
Got it.
And her You Caring fund is, you just go to youcaring.com, and it's Help Julie Elizabeth's Children is the title of the fund, and it's out of Portland, Oregon.
And that's YOU, caring, CARING.com.
Yep.
Check that out.
And then you can read my blog about who my sister really was and why I'm raising this money and the battle that she fought by going to Lil Mamas.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Celia, it's pretty amazing to have you here today. Thank
I'm
you.
so happy that I got to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't know how many ladies you've had on the show.
You are second.
You're the second.
I feel so honored.
Yes. We need more.
You do. I have some good recommendations.
Yeah,
you should have on
definitely.
Tracy Ryan.
I know. We definitely need to get Tracy on here.
Yeah. You can't mess with Tracy.
No. Can't.
Well, this is the song we do on the way out every time.
This is it.
Everybody did a really good job on the pod. And feel free to sing along if you want.
I'm going to just listen.
Everybody did a really good job on the pod. I said everybody did a really good job on the pod. Yeah, everybody did a really good job on the pod. Hey, Eben.
Yo.
You did a really good job on the pod.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I said Nathan
Yeah.
did a really good job on the pod.
Why, thank you, Eben. And Celia
Hello.
did a really good job on the pod.
Aw,
And Jed, you did a really good job on the pod. On the pod. Everybody did. Everybody did.
Check us out, everybody. Subscribe and review on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Send us your stories at Twitter @MindfulPod, Facebook and Instagram @MindfulWarriorPodcast. This podcast was brought to you by Athletes for Care, our organization. Check us out at athletesforcare.org. We've got Nate's books up on the site. It'll take you right to Amazon. Slow Getting Up, an incredible journey through an NFL career, and Fantasy Man. We've got my 420 Bleacher Report cannabis workout still rocking on Bleacher Report. Big shout out to them. Thank you guys again. Keep doing your thing. Keep exercising the soul. Train your mind and sharpen the instincts. We love you guys. Until next time. Peace.